We're reading today the 7th chapter of my novel. It could be the 11th or the 13th chapter. It's the only chapter that's written. So, in the summer of 1970, I traveled to Lawrence, Kansas to attend graduate school at the University of Kansas. I had a vague idea about studying in the film department. On my second day on campus, I was standing in a long line waiting to matriculate and wondering exactly how I was going to pay for this, when the thought hit me that I really didn't want to do this. I stepped out of line and walked the 4 or 5 blocks to an off-campus beer joint that I had been to the night before. It was frequented by a variety of freaks and hippies from the local counterculture community. In front of the bar was a large signboard which said, in large letters, "Free grass." In Kansas, grass grows wild along the river banks and sides of roads. So on this board was a big bag of grass and rolling papers. Anyway, it wasn't long before I was embracing the counterculture with both arms. I was crashing at the headquarters of the LLF, the Lawrence Liberation Front. It was fall, and the academic life was just a blur in the rearview mirror, replaced by nights at the bar, hanging with the hippies, smoking dope, and dropping LSD. There was rock and roll music, hippie chicks, and politics. Nixon was going to speak at Kansas State in Manhattan, Kansas, maybe 100 miles from Lawrence. We were going to the protest. We loaded into 3 or 4 vehicles. I had a panel truck and a Bolex camera. I had come to Lawrence to go to film school, as you recall. Anyway, we drove the 100 miles to K-State, where we had a good time protesting, shooting film, and feeling we were changing the world. We didn't see Nixon, and later we drove back to Lawrence and had a party. And there were lots of parties. I remember this one party in particular. It was the LLF house. It was a big 2-story house with a big yard. The party started around sunset. It was a classic acid test with LSD spike punch, and everyone was tripping. There were loads of people, 100 or more, in the house, on the front yard, all over the place. After a while, I remember the cops showed up. I was on the front lawn and watched them, maybe 3 or 4 of them. They walked around and looked around. I think they couldn't understand what was happening, and they left. Later that night, I was talking with George Kimble. George was a big husky guy who was running for county sheriff. He was running against an ex-Eagle Scout whose platform was about cleaning up the marijuana business in Shawnee County. Now, this Eagle Scout, as it happened, only had one arm. I'm not sure how he lost the other one, but anyway, George Kimble's campaign slogan was, "What this county needs is a 2-fisted sheriff." Now, that is funny enough on his face, but there was another thing about George. George only had one eye. His other eye was glass, and in case I didn't believe him, he took it out and showed it to me. So you might think this was enough excitement for one night, but after George, I met an Indian. It was late, or really early in the morning, and he wanted to take me on a buffalo hunt. The LLF house was near the edge of town, so we went for a hike, a buffalo hunt. We got to the edge of town, and the Indian pointed to a large hill. He said we would creep up to the top of the hill, and at dawn, we would see the buffalo herd on the other side of the hill. So we snuck up the hill, and at the top, we waited for dawn and the buffalo. Dawn came, and we waited, but the buffalo did not show. We were 100 years too late. And now, just like the buffalo, the hippies are long gone from that part of the world.
Yay!